Charlotte, North Carolina. A quiet Saturday night. The parking lot of Loomis Fargo and Company, an armored car company, was empty. The building was closed, but inside, something massive was happening. A man was loading millions of dollars into a white van. No alarms went off. No one tried to stop him because he was supposed to be there. His name, David Ghantt, a 27-year-old vault supervisor, former Army vet, hardworking, quiet, a little awkward, and hopelessly in love with the wrong woman. Her name was Kelly Campbell. She used to work at Loomis Fargo. Blonde, flirty, married, and bored. They met on the job. She flirted. He followed. One day, Kelly introduced David to a man named Steve Chambers, her friend, her business friend. Steve had an idea. What if they stole the money? David laughed at first, but Steve kept pushing. You work with millions of dollars every day. No one would ever suspect you. David was hesitant, but Kelly was the bait. She told him he could take the fall, do a little prison time, and when he got out, he'd be rich. They'd run away together, live in Mexico, just the two of them. David was hooked. The plan was simple, in theory. David would load the money into a company van after hours, drive away, meet Steve and his crew, then flee to Mexico. In return, Steve would hold the cash and send David money while he hid out. Easy, but nothing about what followed would be easy. At 6:40 p.m. on October 4th, David started loading the vault. He worked fast, stack after stack, row after row. The cash was bundled in bricks, 10s, 20s, 50s, hundreds. By the time he was done, the van held over $17 million in cash. It was the second largest cash robbery in U.S. history. He drove to a designated drop-off spot. There, Steve Chambers and his crew were waiting. David handed over the van and left the country. By the next morning, he was in Cozumel, Mexico. Sunday, sand, and he believed a future. Back in North Carolina, the FBI found the Loomis building unlocked. Nothing appeared broken, but then they checked the vault. Gone. $17.3 million vanished without a trace. Inside, they found a single surveillance tape. David Ghantt, caught on camera loading the van. Clear as day. It didn't take long to name him the primary suspect, but by then, he was long gone. The Chambers crew, meanwhile, were living it up. They took the money and ran, not from the law, but to the mall. Steve and his wife, Michelle, started buying everything. Luxury cars, jewelry, furniture, tanning beds, a new house, paid in full. Michelle even walked into a bank with $200,000 in cash in a plastic shopping bag and opened a new account. They weren't subtle. Within days, they had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. Flashy clothes, vacations, even a BMW convertible with a bow on it. All while claiming to be real estate investors. It didn't take long for people to start asking questions. Meanwhile, in Mexico, David was starting to feel abandoned. The payments Steve promised were slow to arrive, and the phone calls with Kelly became fewer. He started to suspect something was wrong. He was right. Steve never intended to split the money. He never She didn't work there anymore, but she had once. And when the FBI showed up at her door, she cracked. Kelly confessed to being part of the plan, but she claimed she didn't know where David was. In truth, she did. She just didn't know how much danger he was in. Down in Mexico, David Ghantt was running out of money and trust. The payments from Steve were late. The calls from Kelly were cold. back in Charlotte, Steve was getting paranoid. He started wondering, what if David talks? What if he gets caught and brings us all down? Steve decided there was only one solution: get rid of David. Steve knew a guy, a small-time criminal nicknamed Mike McKinney. Steve gave him a job: go to Mexico, find David, kill him. Steve even gave him a fake name and location, told him David was dangerous, that it was for protection. Mike agreed. He packed a bag and headed south. But Mike wasn't exactly a professional hitman. He arrived in Cozumel, posing as a tourist. He tracked down David, who was as usual easy to find. He stood out, an American, alone, nervous. Mike watched him, waited for the right time, but he hesitated. David seemed harmless. They ended up talking, drinking, and in the end, Mike couldn't go through with it. Instead, he called Steve and demanded more money. The hit was off. Back in the States, the FBI had eyes everywhere. They were watching Steve and Michelle Chambers, and what they saw was unbelievable. Michelle walked into a jewelry store and spent $20,000 in a single trip. Steve bought a $600,000 house in cash and asked the builder to install a secret vault. They were flashing money like it grew on trees. Even neighbors started to talk. Meanwhile, Steve tried to hide the rest of the money. He buried cash in his yard, in trash bags, in coolers, in his shed. One stash was even hidden inside a spare tire. But nothing could stop what was coming. The FBI had enough. They made their move. One by one, the crew was arrested. Kelly Campbell was taken in. She confessed to more details. Steve and Michelle were caught in their mansion, stunned, surrounded by luxury. When asked about the money, Michelle reportedly said, "We were just going to live a little." The final piece was David. The FBI contacted Mexican authorities and arranged for extradition. David Ghantt was arrested and flown back to the U.S. When he landed, he reportedly said, "It's about time." Now the full story could finally be told. $17 million stolen, 9 people involved, but only a little over $11 million recovered. The rest? Vanished. The FBI believes large chunks of it were spent, or hidden so well it may never be found. And some of it rotted in the ground. The money may be gone, but the story was far from over. Next came the courtroom, and justice. Back in Charlotte, the FBI was on high alert. They had one name: David Ghantt, the man seen loading millions into the van. But something didn't sit right. No one believed David had pulled off a $17 million heist alone. They started digging, first into his personal life, then into his co-workers. One name kept resurfacing: Kelly Campbell, former Loomis employee, blonde, outspoken, had quit just a few months before the robbery. And she'd been close with David. When agents knocked on her door, she folded fast. Kelly admitted to being part of the plan. She said David was in Mexico, but she swore, "I don't know anything else." She was lying. Meanwhile, in Mexico, David Ghantt was starting to unravel. He had been there less than a month, living in a beachside motel, drinking cheap beer and waiting for Kelly's calls. But the money Steve had promised to wire wasn't coming. He was running low and starting to get scared. Steve Chambers, back in North Carolina, had no intention of sending David any real money. Why would he? David had already done his part, loaded the van, disappeared. Now he was just a loose end, and Steve had a very permanent solution in mind. He contacted a local low-level crook named Mike McKinney, someone desperate and loyal. Steve gave him a mission: fly to Mexico, find David, kill him. Steve handed over an address, a fake story, and enough cash to fund the hit. Mike flew down. He checked into a hotel, found David